Hello, this is the RPG Crawler, and it's time, once again, for Indie Game Friday, where each week I take a look at a different independent role-playing game. This week I'm looking at a first-person dungeon crawler called The Seventh Circle. Developed and published by 68K Studios, it was released on September 10th, 2018. The Seventh Circle is a first-person, single-character dungeon crawler with some horror themes. It focuses more on gameplay than graphics, being inspired, albeit rather tangentially, by some 90s classics. There is a permadeath system involving sending characters one by one into a dungeon, but also a means of improving later characters' chances with persistent benefits purchased after a character perishes. In terms of plot, the characters you create are all alter egos, journeying into the subconscious of the main character to uncover and defeat certain hidden demons. It is largely presented through fragmentary narrations that appear to be remnants of dream sequences displayed on old terminals you uncover throughout the dungeon. As such, the plot can be a bit difficult to follow at times, but serves the purpose of justifying not only multiple attempts at the same dungeon complex, but also providing a background for why each attempt can build off of prior attempts. In terms of gameplay, you first create a character. There are 6 overall stats that you can augment. Strength affects melee and boosts max stamina. Intellect boosts magical damage, surprise attack rate, and the duration of spells. Body boosts hit points and fitness saves. Mind boosts spell points, spell point regeneration, and willpower saves. Speed boosts initiative and reflex saves. And luck boosts critical chance, loot and item rarity, and willpower and fitness saves. There are also a number of skills, including combat skills such as blunt and bladed weapons, armor skills, light and heavy, crafting and pharmacology to repair items and make consumable items, and survivalism that affects camping and recovery rate. Then there's the various magical skills such as white magic, conjuration, and necromancy, and so forth. Derived stats that improve during gameplay include the 3 basic saving throws that are used to defend against the various attacks: willpower, fitness, and reflex; initiative that determines at what rate you attack during combat; melee damage and critical chance; magic damage and spell duration modifiers; and then health points, spell points, and maximum stamina. You can either assign skills and stats yourself, select a pre-made class that grants a balanced build for a particular task, or select random that spends things completely randomly. You then select a trait that grants a particular type of bonus, a type of item that can be placed in your starting backpack, such as cures, weapons, etc., and you select a personality. The personality type grants a bonus or penalty to experience and blood drops, as well as spell points versus adrenaline gain. If you have played through enough to recover a relic, you can then choose a relic to start with as well. After character creation, you can then select a starting level. You are limited to dungeon levels that you have actually visited in prior playthroughs, so at first you're limited to level 1. There are 15 levels in the game in total, and the maps are actually relatively large all in all, providing ample opportunity for exploration. Once you get into the game, you are faced with a first-person view of a grid-based dungeon. A mini-map in the corner indicates where items and monsters are, as well as associated encounter circles, as well as the phase of the moon, which I presume is useful for certain events. There's a hit point and spell point meter, as well as a menu interface that expands to allow access to casting, equipment, the bag, your character status, crafting and mixing menus, camping, and game settings. Settings are the aforementioned game settings, while camping allows you to pass time quickly while restoring health and spell points. Doing so in a non-safe area may result in random encounters, however. Equipment allows you to sort through equipment picked up and equip it. Equipment you find is usually very generic, being simply heavy armor or pole weapons or something similar. If you do not need the equipment, you can destroy it to get wood and metal scraps, and if you have enough wood and metal scraps, you can upgrade a piece of equipment, granting it particular bonuses. You can also store certain equipment for later use. The bag, by contrast, simply gives a list of various consumables you have. You can only carry a certain amount of each, and consumables range from various ranged weapons like throwing knives and hammers, to various oils you can use to modify your attacks. Souls of the Damned can summon allies, and then various recovery items and stat boost items. These aren't used on the main map usually, well, except for health and spell point potions, but they can be used during combat. Craft and Mix allows you to create more throwing items or various potions and oils, while Casting opens up the casting interface. Each spell consists of 4 letters, which you type in while casting, and spells can be learned either through experimentation or by looking at signs throughout the game. Once you know a spell, it remains in your spellbook during future playthroughs, even if your skills are too low to cast it. You can assign certain spells to hotkeys for easy access. Finally, there's a status, which opens up your character sheet. In this, you can review how much experience you need to level, your current modified stats, and your skill progress. Skills raised through use and at certain breakpoints may offer certain abilities. You can also track how many blood drops you've collected, as well as certain traits that you've picked up. Movement uses the WASD keys plus the Q and E to turn around and step through the dungeon. You can mouse click to interact with certain things such as chests and skulls and switches. Chests may contain items, while skulls may give you dread quests, and so forth. Monsters are marked on the main view by abstract icons and may be encountered if you step into their encounter zone, shown by various colors of circle on the minimap. Combat is turn-based, but turns are not necessarily consecutive. You have the creature that you're facing displayed center screen, while any additional monsters in the encounter show up as abstract encounter icons in the background. In the upper left are the meters, showing health and spell points, but also stamina and adrenaline. Stamina drops when you take actions, and adrenaline builds up as you give and take damage. Beneath this is the round order that shows you who goes next. Green icons are your turns, while red are the enemy's turns. Depending on your initiative, you or the enemy may get several turns in a row, especially if you run out of stamina. Then there's the distance and the effect grid. The distance shows where you are in relation to your opponent, and each character has a cone representing the reach of their weapons. During a fight, a character or enemy can close or gain distance, subject to the limits of the grid. The effect grid simply shows what effects a character is under, and mousing over an effect icon will give you a more in-depth explanation. On the right-hand side, there's the command list, which includes moving back or forth, each taking 1 turn, fleeing or charging your character up for a power attack, which also takes 1 turn each, attack or rest or guard, which also take a turn each, special, which unleashes special abilities if you've got enough adrenaline stored up, casting spells, which only takes a turn once a spell is actually cast, and the bag, from which you may review your consumables. A turn is only taken if you decide to use one of those consumables. Battle simply proceeds in terms of initiative, and you should balance your character's leftover stamina so as not to be caught needing a few rounds to recover. Combat proceeds until all the enemies are defeated, after which you gain experience and blood drops depending on the monster's difficulty and your personality, as well as potentially a list of monster parts that are used for creating potions and oils. Experience is used to gain levels, while blood drops are used after a particular alter ego dies in order to boost certain persistent effects. When you level up, you may get stat points to allocate between your 6 primary stats, although not every level depending on your settings. You also get to draw from the Dread deck. The deck itself consists of a variety of random bonuses that are applied to your character, everything from stat boosts to damage to hit point boosts, etc., etc. During play, you may find additional cards, which you can then use to customize your deck between playthroughs. If you like playing caster classes, for instance, you can eventually customize your deck to produce more caster-style bonuses. In the dungeon, you may encounter switches that open doors, hidden switches that crumble walls away, boxes of gear, quest and challenge-giving skulls, illusory walls, even black holes. Now, the black holes drop you into a minigame that resembles a board game, in which the goal is to get to the other black hole at the opposite end of the board. Each move takes a certain amount of resistance, and you have a limited number of rolls to do so. Each roll grants you a certain number of squares of movement, and each square has an effect that may grant additional rolls, decrease or boost damage, add or reduce the resistance stats, and so on and so forth. If you run out of resistance or you run out of turns, then it is a failure and you are kicked out and you take damage, while clearing the black hole usually has some sort of effect, such as opening a door. At the end of each dungeon, there seems to be a boss creature that is more difficult and has specialized graphics and moves, It seems that killing a boss grants a relic which may then be selected in future playthroughs to grant your character certain bonuses. If you take too long on a level, a blood tide sweeps in, which makes it more difficult to rest between encounters. Once your character dies, you may offer the blood that you've collected to boost one of 8 pillars. Each one has an effect on all future playthroughs, such as granting additional mana or health, increasing the number of medicines and items future alter egos can carry, and so forth. Each of these pillars has multiple levels. You can't carry over blood drops from playthroughs to playthroughs, so it would behoove you to spend as many of them as you can. You may then select one of 3 gates for your next alter ego, which grants certain special bonuses. The only limit seems to be that you can't use the same gate for 2 alter egos in a row, so if you select, say, the Path of the Slave, that particular gate won't be available the next time that you die. A further point of persistence is that if you reach level 30 in a skill, all future alter egos will then start at skill level 5 in that skill, which is a not inconsiderable boost. Further, if you reach certain milestones with what you do through the playthroughs, it'll offer additional stat boosts. These accrue from playthrough to playthrough. Graphically, the game has some semi-decent, if a bit odd, horror-based artwork, although the walls of the dungeon do begin to look pretty much the same sooner or later. The soundtrack sounds a little bit on the edgy side, which fits the theme but could grate on some people's nerves after a while. I thought it was decent, but honestly, I could see its failings. The interface is clunky at best, and takes some real getting used to, as does the combat system, and in fact sometimes switching from menu to menu results in a loading screen, which it really shouldn't. I'm not so sure about the storyline, as it appears to be one of those things that will take most of the game to really understand, so you have to play pretty far through it. However, the gameplay itself is pretty solid, at least if you enjoy that sort of stat-heavy dungeon crawler common to years gone past. The addition of persistent effects that give bonuses and allow customization for future playthroughs is a good incentive to replay the game, as it gives a sense of character advancement even in the presence of a permadeath system, and yet still allows for experimentation with different creature types. Now, I'm not entirely sure if I'm on board with a relatively simplified loot system, but it still does require some decision making regarding what your character can equip, so I guess it does its job. The difficulty of the game is also a little on the high side, which doesn't actually seem unfair, it just needs to be noted. That is, unless you exhaust yourself against a creature and end up having 9 turns in a row where it's just smacking you around unchallenged, that sometimes seems a little unfair. But the rest of it, it's a pretty good progression. So, I can't really recommend this game to everyone. This is very much a niche audience game, but for that niche audience, I do believe that the gameplay will more than make up for its other flaws. It is a pretty hardcore experience all in all, and with that said, I'll leave it at that. This has been the RPG Crawler with Indie Game Friday, the 7th Circle. As always, I'll leave a link where you can pick it up in the description below. If you like what you've seen, remember to leave a like, comment if you've got any feedback, and subscribe for more RPG content, both tabletop and computer. Until next time, take care and goodbye.